Chapter 2 of The Secret of the Painted House. See a pin and pick it up. Emily didn't tell her mother about the painted house. She didn't know why exactly. The whole thing felt too new to talk about and too strange. Besides, her mother would worry that the playhouse belonged to someone. She would say Emily shouldn't have peeked in the windows at all. She would certainly say that Emily shouldn't go back. Emily spent the rest of the morning unpacking boxes. Logan even helped, if it could be called helping. He emptied boxes with lightning speed, but he didn't put anything away, not even his toys. Once Emily caught him tucking a box of matches into his pocket. When she took them away, he howled. Logan loved matches. He even learned to light them. He was the kind of kid who had to be watched every minute. Anything he wasn't supposed to mess with thrilled him. Lunch was bottled juice and peanut butter and jelly on crackers. Mom hadn't found a grocery store yet. After lunch, Mom put Logan down for a nap. "I'm gonna lie down too," she said to Emily. "I'm tired. Do you want to rest?" Emily shook her head. "I'll read," she said. She took her book out the front steps. It was a ghost story, one of her favorites, but before long, she put it down. She'd read it several times, and it was getting boring. The ghost showed up in the same place every time, and the girl seemed pretty dumb to be surprised to see it. Hadn't she gone into that old house looking for ghosts? Emily didn't know what else to do. Go back to the playhouse? She couldn't without telling her mother. Besides, it was a long walk, and the afternoon was growing hot. A woman with white hair came out of the house across the way. She wore white slacks and a flowered blouse. She wore a smile, too. The woman smiled all the way to Emily's porch. "You're Emily?" the woman said. It was more of a statement than a question, so Emily didn't reply. "I'm Grandma Rose," she said. "That's what everybody calls me here, Grandma." She held out a hand. Emily shook her hand. She felt funny doing it, though. Usually only grown-ups shook hands with each other. "May I?" Grandma Rose asked. At first, Emily didn't know how to answer. "May I what?" Then she figured it out. Grandma Rose was wanted to sit down. "Sure." Emily scooted over to make room. Grandma Rose settled herself. They sat there side by side, looking off into the trees. "My mom's taking a nap," Emily said. "Should I go wake her?" "Goodness, no. Let her sleep." Grandma Rose looked into her eyes. "It's you I came to see anyway." "Me?" Emily was so shocked that "me" came out as a squeak. Grandma Rose nodded. I saw you go off into the woods this morning. Did you find it?" Find it? What was this woman talking about? Before she even had a chance to ask, Emily knew. "You mean the playhouse?" "What else?" Emily took a deep breath. "Yes, I found it." Was Grandma Rose going to scold her? Maybe she wasn't supposed to go near the playhouse. Maybe it belonged to Grandma Rose or to someone long ago. Daughter of hers. Emily didn't know what to say about it, really. "It's nice," she said finally. "Nice?" The word exploded with a laugh. Emily stared. "Weird would be more like it." Grandma Rose shook her head. "Built over there across the creek, practically lost in the woods. All that painting on the walls." Emily took a breath. "The woods inside the house," she said. "And the house inside the woods," Grandma Rose added. Emily sighed. She wasn't the only one who found the painting strange. "It's like they go on forever," Grandma Rose said. "Each one gets tinier and tinier." So Grandma Rose got the same feeling from the painting she did. "Who built it?" Emily asked. "Who was it for?" "It was for Pin." "Pin?" "Her name was Penelope Hansen, but folks called her Pin. See a pin and pick it up. All the day you'll have good luck." Grandma Rose paused. She seemed to be thinking. Then she added, "She didn't, though. Have good luck, I mean." Emily held her breath. She knew the beginnings of a story when she heard one. "Pin's dad had money, as you might guess. building a whole house like that for a child. Not that his money did him much good. Grandma Rose folded her hands in her lap. They were wrinkled in a friendly way. She turned to Emily. His wife ran off and left him, you see. She left them both. She was an artist, a painter. They say she went off to be with her own kind. She just left that girl behind, nothing to remember her but the paint on those walls. So Pin's mother had done the painting, and then she had left. Somehow, that made everything even stranger. What happened to Pin? Emily asked. She died. Grandma Rose's voice grew soft. Her dad's fancy mansion burned down and she died in the fire. Some folks even said she started it. Nobody knows really. She was just a girl, no older than you. Grandma Rose's eyes were a sad blue. Emily leaned forward. When did it happen? The playhouse and the fire. Was it a long time ago? Yes, it was a long time back, in the 50s. They are probably all dead by now. It seems I heard about her mother dying recently. She must have been pretty old. Emily looked around the small circle of houses. So, there used to be a mansion here? Right here, Grandma Rose agreed. She swept a hand to take in the whole area. There used to be just one big house in all this space. And a playhouse, Emily added. And a playhouse, Grandma Rose agreed. She stood up and slapped dust off her white slacks. I'm not sure anybody ever played in it, though. There were 100 questions Emily wanted to ask, 1,000 maybe. But she didn't know where to start. And before she could ask a single one, Grandma Rose was gone. She waved goodbye. Then she marched back across the gravel road.